Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility. It's Wednesday, new review day here on the channel. Look who's in the co-captain's chair, and he's usually in the co-captain's chair on a Wednesday show for a good reason. When there's something really exciting to talk about. Steven Reid, welcome to our Wednesday show from the UK Connection and the flag seat and everything else, right?
Hello.
Did you by any chance catch that little reference I made to you in an episode a couple days ago?
I'm not sure if I did or not. I've been away, remember. I've been away, so I'm still playing catch up.
So maybe you didn't. Okay. All right. I'll say no more. You'll see it if you happen to watch it.
Okay.
You just did the little thing I referenced, so I'm confusing everybody now. So
there are so many little things that people reference. Chad's going these days. So.
Anyway, this is what we're here to talk about. We're doing a little different size box appearance here on the StreamYard, so I'm trying to gauge how to hold these things. So yeah, it's a Jethro Tull live bursting out, the inflated edition. It's big. I need Simon right now to do one of those big puff things that he does so well, right? Yeah, exactly. So this is the next in line, right? So we got like Broadsword and the Beast last year. Now we've got this classic 1978 double live album, remixed by Steven Wilson, as well as all sorts of other fun stuff, right? In the book, these things are lovely. These are the gold standards of these type of reissues. Doesn't get much better than this. Loaded with a, Steven, I don't know how many page book do we have here? Usually 80 or 90.
Oh, does it? 96 page book. In the book, it's saying that you have a Q&A with Ian Anderson conducted by Martin Webb, which kind of covers the whole era that we're looking at here. There is an article on the making of Bursting Out with engineers Lee Mantle, Colin Leggett, Chris Amson, and Pete Smith. Long-time road crew Kenny Wiley and Dave Morris reminisce on touring with Tull in 1978. Tony Freeman's recollections of working as a member of the stage crew on the Bursting Out European and UK tour. Chris Welsh's article for Melody Maker on the Madison Square Garden live TV transmission, which is on disc 3, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit of length, I would think. Images from the original sleeve and inner bags and additional live photographs from the period, and a 1978 recording and touring chronology for the European, UK, and US tours. As always, it's fabulous, and much though I'm still slowly but surely working my way through all of this content, the content in the book is almost as exciting as the music, and that's been a theme right across this reissue series. They've been put together with love and care. They look fabulous.
It's basically, you could almost say it's worth the price of admission and all on its own, because absolutely. I think any of us, could you just imagine if one day they decide to take all the books from all of these reissues and put them into one big volume, just the books?
Yes, please.
We'd probably buy that as well, right? That's
at the end, absolutely. Because it's a visual document as well. Some of the little kind of images that you get from the tours and various things, stuff that you've never seen before. It's just fantastic, and there's such a breadth of lineups covered across all of these reissues and various things. It is just a fascinating piece of history that's been put together, both musically and visually, but then also in the written material. Fantastic. Yeah, this has been the gold standard for reissues on album by album. There are fantastic box sets that encompass lots of different things, but I think for album by album through a discography, I'm struggling to think of anything that's been done consistently better than the Tull reissues. They really have been top notch.
Yeah, they've been really, really good. And I think by this point in time, Steven Wilson knows how to work with the music of this band, because he's done quite a few of them already. And this I always felt was kind of an interesting choice for a remix, because I always thought this was a really good sounding live album in general. Yep. So I don't know really if the remix here is impactful as some of the other Select the Studio albums. It still sounds really good. It sounds really good, which, and you have on disc 1, and let's lay it all out for everybody. So we've got the Steven Wilson stereo remix, part 1 on disc 1. That's yeah. We've already agreed we're going to talk about this quite a bit. So on disc 1, you get, and everybody knows the tracks, right? You get Claude Knob's introduction, and you got No Lullaby, Sweet Dream, Skating Away, Jack and the Green, One Brown Mouse, Heavy Horses, New Day Yesterday, the flute solo, including God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen and Bore, Living in the Past, and Songs from the Wood. And then you get 5 sound check recordings.
Yeah. Right in the middle of the show, in effect.
Right in the middle of the show.
Yeah.
Which are cool. And you get No Lullaby, Sweet Dream, Heavy Horses, Botanic Man, which is a little instrumental, and Four Wheel Drive, Low Ratio, an instrumental. Of course, that comes on the follow-up album. So everybody, just so you give a little context here, this is the Heavy Horses tour. Yep. This is basically the end of an era for this lineup of the band, which, as we've seen with a lot of classic live albums, they generally signify an end of an era for a band. It just always seems to work out that way. Yeah. So you've got, the first 10 tracks of the live album. And I remember I was telling you the story. The first time I played this, I really didn't pay a lot of attention to track listing on the back. And I'm listening to this and I'm getting into it. I'm like, yeah, I love this live album. The remix sounds good. And, I'm totally digging on Heavy Horses. And then 20 minutes later or so, Heavy Horses comes on again. I'm like, wait, what's that all about? And then I go look here. I'm like, oh, why did they tack on these sound check recordings right in the middle of this live album? Because then on disc 2, it continues on with the live album with Thick as a Brick, Hunting Girl, Too Old to Rock and Roll, Conundrum, Minstrel in the Gallery, Cross-Eyed Mary, Quatrain, Aqualung, Locomotive Breath, and the Dam Busters March, which is the rest of the album. And then at the end of that, you get Conundrum again, Quatrain, and the Dam Busters March from the sound check. Wouldn't it have made a lot more sense to go do the whole? And I know you've got to put it across 2 discs. I understand that, but do I don't know, add Thick as a Brick, Hunting Girl, and Too Old to Rock and Roll at the end of disc 1, then continue on with disc 2, and at the end of disc 2, do all the sound check recordings all together. Wouldn't that have made more sense?
Well, you would have thought so. I mean, I meant to go and check this because we discussed this at the time. I'm not even everything that's on CD 1 is record 1 from the original double album. I think there's even stuff from record 2 on CD 1. So you do wonder why the decision was taken to then cut things after Songs from the Wood.
Yeah.
Which admittedly is one of the songs that was edited down for the original release, because I think Heavy Horses, Living in the Past, and Songs from the Wood were edited so that everything would fit on a double album, because obviously Tull played longer.
The full versions here, folks. So there's a little bit at the end which was tacked off. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and that is fabulous. It's great to have everything in its entirety. But it really, we all accept there's going to be a fade out where there never used to be, because we're going to go from the end of CD 1 into CD 2, and that will make things a little bit odd. So there had to be a break somewhere. And I suppose there's an argument that you could say, do you really want to have just kind of 5 or 6 songs left on CD 2 of the show and then put the sound check there? But I would prefer that to half the sound check appearing in what is the middle of the live show. Now, you have to change the disc anyway. It's the old, you have to get up to turn the vinyl over. So it makes it feel very odd to go from live show into sound check. And then if you want to finish the live show, you put it in disc 2. And then you go back into the sound check at the end of that. And it's the first time in this entire reissue campaign where I've kind of sat there thinking, so why did they do that then? What was that for?
I thought the same thing. And I'm just thinking, because, generally what I do, and I'm still old school, right? So I will, when I get new CDs and things, I go and I put them into iTunes, and then they go into my because I got a bunch of iPods, right? A big classic iPod. So I'm thinking with this one, I haven't done it yet. What I'm going to do is when I go to put disc 1 in, it's going to show all the tracks. I'm going to actually retitle the name of the last 5 tracks. I'm going to give it a different title so that it doesn't sit here in the live album anymore. I'll basically call it whatever I'm going to call it, Inflated Edition soundcheck recordings, and it'll come up then in my iTunes on my iPod as a different album, so that I can listen to them on their own if I ever want to, or I'll just take them right out because maybe I don't really give a shit about them all that much because they are just sound check recordings, right? They're not as good as the actual. So anyway, but yeah, it's weird. It's just weird.
It is weird. Yes, it's also weird that they've repeated that process on the DVDs.
Yeah.
It's the track listing runs in the same order, and there are, as you would expect, a myriad of sound options to listen to on the DVD. All of the things that you think will be there, your surround and various things like that. But it's still split in that strange way, and we all get our own enjoyment in different ways out of these kind of reissue sets. I tend not to be too worried about having 5 or 6 different audio options. I know that's important to some people, so I take that.
Well, if you got the setup for it,
personally would have preferred to have another CD here that had the sound check recordings on it, and just had a short CD 1 and a short CD 2. I get that maybe adds to the cost, but I could have done away with some of the sound options and just put all of the live stuff and sound check on one DVD, because it would fit, or a Blu-ray, to be fair.
Yeah.
Because it would definitely all fit on a Blu-ray, and then you would have it all in the correct order, probably with all the sound options on the Blu-ray anyway. So nitpicking, yes, but it has been such a good reissue campaign that it kind of is worth nitpicking, because there have been no other kind of, I mean, it's a faux pas of this kind of size.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, it's fabulous. Bursting Out is a fabulous album. It was a fabulous album. It's even more fabulous for now being completely complete.
Yeah.
Right? You get what I mean? And I definitely would want the sound check recordings. It's not that I don't want them. I just don't quite want them where they are. But I'm maybe labeling the point
here. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. So yes.
As far as what do you think of the remix? I think it sounds great.
The album sounds fabulous. Yeah, I'm really pleased with the remix. I don't dislike it. Some remixes, when the album already sounded great, can change the experience in a way where you kind of go, don't know if I get the same vibe from that. I still get the same vibe from this, actually. It sounds fabulous without really changing too much. Some people might think that's a bit, well, why bother? Well, because we do. But I'm impressed. I like it.
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily changes really much of anything. Like I'll use as an example. So like the Robin Trower Bridge of Sighs remix that this just came out. I mean, that sounds like the songs are the same, but it sounds very different. I don't really think it's a live album, so I don't know how much more you can really, maybe there's some levels that he did, tweaked a bit, or I don't know. I'd have to really, really sit and concentrate on it. But I always thought that this was a really good sounding live album, and it's still a really, really good sounding live album.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, for me, and maybe a lot of people watching, the real reason to go gaga over this is the Madison Square Garden show, the full show, because that's been floating around, and that's really good. That is. Featuring a slightly different lineup, right? Because you got a different bass player on there. Because we had a little illness in the band, right? Mr. John was on and off. He had lots of health issues around this time, and so what's the name of the bass player?
Tony Williams.
Yeah,
Tony Williams comes and deputizes on bass. And I must admit, if you weren't watching,
you might not even know.
He does a great copy job. I mean, John Glasgow was a phenomenal bassist. Yes. But he does a great copy job. If you just close your eyes and listen, you wouldn't even think, oh, wow, that's different. It's not like
if you're not paying too much attention visually, he kind of almost looks like him as well.
Absolutely. Yes, he does actually. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, hats off to him, because he's brilliant, considering he is kind of slotting in and all these various things. But that's a really, for anyone that doesn't know, this was a show that initially was broadcast live from Madison Square Garden for the Old Grey Whistle Test here in the UK on BBC Two, I would imagine, maybe BBC One. And in their wisdom, the BBC being the fabulous organisation that they are, and I do actually mean that, some people don't, they decided not to do the whole show, which I kind of get because it's a couple of hours. But they picked it up kind of a third of the way in.
Yeah.
Which makes for a very unusual, it's an unusual audio experience when you listen to the CD, because it doesn't make much sense. At least on the DVD, you suddenly kind of go, oh, so that's what happened. The BBC decided to only pick things up.
But Ian announces that at the beginning of the show. He's like,
he does.
surprise for you at some point. I don't even know if he knew when exactly they were going to pop in and start. Taping.
And they in effect become their own warm-up act.
Yeah.
I can't remember which song it kicks in. That's terrible. It'll be in my full review that's on the webzine. But you get the end of a song, literally the crescendo. Ian Anderson's giving it all the, as he does, and then they all go off stage, and you're like, pardon? And then suddenly you see them backstage, and Ian Anderson's talking to the audience like this.
He's totally
and suddenly he's live on TV, and he throws the microphone down, and they rush out as conquering heroes starting the show. It's really weird. But I have to say, it's brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. What a performance. What a band they were at that time. I don't know if we've actually said it's Ian Anderson, it's Martin Barr, as you would expect, John Evan on keyboards, Barrymore Barlow on drums, Dee Palmer, who's I don't think had long joined the band at that stage, also on keyboards and a variety of other things. And of course, it was meant to be John Glasgow on bass, but it's Tony Williams on bass. What a band! What a band! Both in terms of how tight they are, but visually, they're visually exciting. There's so much happening on stage. I mean, Anderson is everything that he's made out to be. He's a phenomenal frontman. It's difficult to kind of rest your eyes off him. And yet, when they get their moment in the sun, I mean, Martin Barr is a phenomenal guitarist. He's wearing these terrible suits, and he's got an awful comb over it, all kind of coming down here somewhere with the beard and all this sort of stuff. It's like your uncle's come to tea, and then he rips out a solo, and you're like, well, you can come back again.
Yeah, my uncle plays guitar like that, right?
Yeah, but it's John Evan on keyboards.
Yeah,
all the time. It's just like the spotlight will go on, and he's already going. It's brilliant. It is so fantastic. Yeah,
it's very hammy. Yeah, you could tell that they were having a blast being videotaped like that, right? It's just like, and it's just interesting how this is this is their headline in Madison Square Garden, right? So 18 to 20,000 people there live, and so this is arguably right at the height of their powers. Yeah. And then they put out Stormwatch, which is basically the end of this lineup. So, what I said earlier is actually, I predated that a little bit because they still had one more studio album with this lineup. But then by the time Stormwatch comes out, that's almost over.
It's funny because the whole new band. Yeah, they have another album with this lineup, but musically we've already moved on.
Yeah.
And then after that album, we then lineup-wise move on too. This is definitely the changing of the guard, even though the personnel doesn't change right after this. Musically, it does feel like a full stop. And now we're going to do something different. Yeah, absolutely. And what a fabulous way for it to happen. So then you also get the same thing at the end of the show where they go into the Dam Busters March and everything finishes and the credits roll, all of this stuff. And then the band just don't leave the stage. And there wasn't much else they could do. So the audio that comes before the video kicks in and then that comes after when the video stops because somebody just hit stop, but the band keep playing and the audio was still recorded. You get stills from the show, which is great. It would have been nice if there was a few more because it does begin to get a little
You start repeating them over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same again, I'm nitpicking, but you think a whole show's worth of stills you could have taken, but there you go. So you stop watching it and just start listening to it again in that sense. So it's a very weird kind of process. I think it has been out on DVD before a few years ago in this format. This, I must admit, was the first time that I've seen it. So experiencing the show is a little odd, but it's a highlight of this set. And that's on the back of Bursting Out being excellent. So I'm really delighted that it's there.
Yeah, and plus now you get a CD of the whole show, which is really nice. I mean, so I think that might be for a lot of people the highlight of this, depending on whether you've seen the footage or not. So, yeah, it's an interesting viewing experience. I mean, you had warned me about it, right? And I remember when I had it in, the first few songs with just the stills. So I remember I had a book out and I'm sitting there reading my book and I keep every now and then I look up and all of a sudden at one point I look up and there they are backstage Ian with the microphone getting ready to walk. I'm like, oh, I guess we're beginning now.
Yeah, you actually have to pay attention. So then the rest of the DVD, The only other little things you have on there are a couple of adverts.
Yeah.
Which were obviously aired on the television to promote Bursting Out, and the kind of the tours that were happening round that time. So they're only a couple of minutes long. And same again, it's lovely to have them there, but they don't add a huge amount of value. But as completists, there's been adverts and things on other sites too. So you want it all there. Give me as much content as you can possibly give me. I'll take it. That's all about it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
So yeah,
and
do you prefer the Madison Square show over Bursting Out?
I don't know if I do. They're both really good. This is a band that's just really like full tilt on stage at this point in time. You know, Glasscock is kind of special, right? I mean, he's nothing against Tony Williams. I don't know. I mean, the track list is almost identical, pretty much. You know, so I don't know. I don't know if I really favor one over the other. It's kind of cool to hear the Garden Show because that's, you know, it is a little bit different. But and I will say the Garden Show sounds great. Steven Wilson did a really nice job. Considering this is like a live show that's been kind of sitting in the vault for so many years, I think it sounds really good. And the video presentation looks great, even though it's only DVD. Blu-ray would have been nice, but, you know, whatever. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that might be a thing with some people. They might be like, okay, so we have two basically identical shows from roughly the same tour, although the Bursting Out album is taken from different sources, right? I don't know exactly which.
It's officially recorded across Europe. I think that it's accepted that most of it was taken from shows in Germany and Switzerland, but I think there may be some other performances there too. It's interesting, as you see, because the track lists are very similar between Bursting Out and the Madison Square set. They feel quite different as shows. I don't know if it's because I now attach the Madison Square Garden show with the visuals. It feels a little bit more kind of skin of its teeth sort of thing. It feels like they're on the edge. And I actually think that adds to the performance in many ways. It's not been quite as live albumed. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean by that? Yeah. All live albums, every live recording that you'll ever see, whether bands tell you or not, have all had a tweak here and there, something, whether it's just on a desk or little bits added and whatnot. The Madison Square Garden show feels an awful lot more kind of, wow, this is what we did.
Well, it is. I mean, there's no, I mean, you just look at the sequencing, because the sequencing, that's really the big difference here. The sequencing is different. And you can tell if you go back, if you look at the Bursting Out track sequence, you know, if I was the one to put this sequence together, I don't know if I would have done it in that same way. When you go through the Garden show, like, so we got Sweet Dream starts off, and then One Brown Mouse, then Heavy Horses, then Thick as a Brick, then No Lullaby, then Flute, then Songs from the Wood, Quatrain, Aqualung, Locomotive Breath, The Dam Busters March, Drum Solo, Too Old to Rock and Roll, Too Young to Die, My God, and Cross-Eyed Mary. I mean, that's that's pretty powerful. You know, when I'm thinking of like encores, that makes a lot of sense. The last half of the last quarter of this set. Whereas in the beginning half, you got a lot of the then new album, plus you've got Thick as a Brick kind of in the middle of it all. So I think that like the sequencing from the Garden show, which is actually what happened that night, is probably more true to the tour itself and the way they played these songs in the sequence from night to night. Whereas Bursting Out probably was moved around a lot based on what you can fit on the side of vinyl and all that. So.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely true, along with the original edits that they did. Because you've also got to remember that amazing last quarter of the Madison Square Garden show. So once you get into Too Old to Rock and Roll, Too Young to Die, My God, Cross-Eyed Mary, that wasn't broadcast. which is kind of mind-boggling, because it's what a great way to say it.
Yeah, for sure.
We'd already said thank you, good night by that stage, but the band kept playing.
Yeah. So, what's really cool about this live, what I always thought about this live album, is that you do have some cool stuff that's on here that's not really from an album, like the Dam Busters March and Quatrain. That's cool that they throw those little kind of jammy instrumental type things in there, I think, which is really neat. And you got the solos and everything, and it's a great live album. It really is. And now, you know, with this, it's even better now.
Yeah. And they're so tight. So tight. There's so much going on. There are so many little asides various things where suddenly somebody will appear with a different instrument for 2 seconds and then go again. It is so choreographed. It's so clever. It's such a visual feast to watch that show. But then when you listen to the other broadcasts as well, you think, oh, they were doing all of this every night. It's not just for that show.
Yeah.
This was what they were doing. It gives you the context. So yeah, I was concerned when this was first announced because you thought, we've really covered all this era with the box sets that have already come out. And I thought, what can be left to throw us? I mean, we've already got live shows from this time, really. And then they put the Madison Square Garden show on there. And there will be people who've already got it, but it's just such a joy to have on there. And it feels like the right thing to be part of this.
I agree. And, as far as the box layout, I mean, you got your discs, first 2 CDs housed there.
Yeah.
You've got the third one sitting in a little sleeve here. And then in the back, you've got another sleeve sitting right there. Right there. And then, of course, the last 2 right here.
Yes, for anyone that is concerned, you don't have to do that disc Jenga thing that you had to do with the broadsword set, where you had to learn how to use the lugs and move things out and do a tutorial.
None of that nonsense this time around.
None of that. This is just
for that A+. Yeah, that had us all confounded there for a while. This is pretty easy to configure, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, is this one of the best of the Tull reissue box sets? Maybe not one of the best, but it's still damn good. I have a hard time giving this anything less than a 4.5 or a 5 out of 5 star because it's a great live album, it's a great presentation, and yeah, maybe we don't get a lot of the unearthed goodies like we have on some of the other ones, but that's okay. It's still great.
Yeah, I was a little meaner on my review that's on the web stream, purely because I viewed it from, I know how I've ranked some of the other box sets that have been released as part of this set or reissue campaign. And I've given them 4.5s and 5s. And I thought, well, is this quite as good? Is there quite as much exclusive stuff?
No, not really.
Are there a few little niggles in the track running order and various things? So I've given it 4. But when I'm listening to it, it's
still
a 4.5
really good.
or 5. It's really all that kind of. I'm being that guy when I wrote the review that kind of went, yeah, I'm being mean here. I'm being mean.
Yeah, because this is not Stormwatch or Songs from the Wood.
Yeah, exactly.
And to me, those are like
Exactly.
that's the gold standard from all of these so far. I mean, you can make a case for almost any of them, but to me, and Minstrel is great too. But Songs from the Wood and Stormwatch to me are, and even Broadsword is really good because there's so much extra stuff on there. I mean, these can't go wrong.
It's still great though. It's still great. I want to emphasize that. I'm saying it's a 4 out of 5. I mean, 4 out of 5 is fantastic for most things that you review. When you're up at 4 out of 5, what you're saying is people go and listen to this.
Yeah.
You go beyond that, you're going, you have to buy it. You've got to own it. If you like the band, you've got to own it. If you like the band, and especially if you bought the other ones, I mean, you need this. You really do. I'm not going to lie. You do need it.
You do. Now, whether we'll get one of the next album in the series or not, we shall see.
Well, it's telling that we've gone past this era by quite some distance and then come back to it.
Yeah.
Would suggest to me that, and do I love Under Wraps? No. Do I want it to continue? I do really, yeah, absolutely. I'm still intrigued as to what else was recorded and what might have been for an era that is less loved. There's still a lot to like in an era that's less loved. So I would love it personally.
I almost feel they should go all the way to the end at this point. I would be, I would like to see the rest of the 80s albums. I don't, for the next album, I would love to hear a remix of that. Personally. Yes,
that's maybe where the potential is for the eye opener. Is can we actually do something different with it that makes people go, oh, okay, so if we'd done this and actually maybe put drums and things on it, what a crazy idea.
Or a live recording where they're playing a good chunk of that album, because I mean, I didn't see the tour, but if you go and you listen to some of those songs live, they sound much better than the album actually came out. I'd love to see Crest of a Knave. I'd like to see a Rock Island one as well. So I
like Rock Island as well. I like Crest of a Knave too, to be fair. So I would be in for these. Yeah, absolutely. But whether there's everything I read from Jethro Tull fans all says yes, please, we want it all now. We want it all. Whether people would go out and spend the money on them, though, that's where the proof is, I'm not quite so convinced.
I know I would get them regardless.
Well, yeah, and I would too. I mean, and if anyone's listening, if they want to go back and reissue some of the ones that I was too slow on, that would be nice too. Thanks. Okay, because I'm missing 3 or 4 that I now think idiot.
Yeah, well, I just gotta hope that, like they did with Thick as a Brick, you gotta hope they reissue them. Because
Yeah.
I mean, which ones don't you have?
Too Old to Die, I don't have. Too Young to Die, Too Old to Rock and Roll, I don't have. And I don't have.
That's the worst one, by the way. Too Old to Rock and Roll is the worst one out of all of them.
Is it? So I don't need it then. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not a big fan of the album. There's not a lot on there. It's just
it's not my favorite album, to be fair. I have looked. It shows you that I've looked at the prices that it's out there at, and I've looked at the content and thought, I'm not prepared to pay that price for that content. What else don't I have? That is a very good question. Do you know that? It's all sitting up there. I can't actually remember off the top of my head. But yeah, I slept and I shouldn't.
Yeah, these are it's like drugs, right? Give me more. Between these and the Marillion ones, and then the Trower one just came out, and I'm like, I remember I was a little worried about what this would look like, and then it's like, oh, it's kind of like a little mini version of the Tull and Marillion set. So I was like, oh, I kind of like this. All right.
Yeah, I do like this idea, as we've done with the Tull ones and the Marillion ones. I like this as an idea. The format works.
Yeah. Most
of them, other than Broadsword, that holds the discs really, really well. You can read them without fear of breaking it. And that's a big thing too, because some of these things are a bit fragile, and you start to read them and you think, I don't know if I can open the pages fully. But not with these. They've been put together really well. So yeah, as I've said, gold standard, it's an overused phrase, but this is the gold standard, I think, for reissuing single albums across the catalogue. This and the Marillion ones, to be fair. They're maybe not quite as exciting as these, I don't think, because there's not quite so much bespoke material out there to put on them. And they've missed bits and bobs with some of those sets as well, too. Probably for licensing reasons as much as anything else. These feel much more complete. I'm sure somebody will tell me down below what we're missing. I get that. But the amount of exclusive material that's ended up on these reissues, not so much this one, but across the campaign, has been quite astounding. But that says more about Tull, I suppose, than anybody else, really, because who else was recording whole albums and going, nah, let's not bother. Let's do something else.
We'll hold this for later. Ian's thinking, in 40 years, I can make lots of money off of unearthing this stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It wouldn't surprise me that he was thinking that way, because why else would you hold on? I mean, I've heard comments from people that said that the unreleased stuff that was included on the Stormwatch box set is arguably better than any of the songs on the regular album. And it's not far removed, right?
I'm not going to argue too hard against that, yeah.
Right? So why hold on to that stuff? I don't know. Whatever. I'm glad he finally let it go at some point. That's all. I mean,
Yeah, it's been an absolute joy. And as I say, I hope there's enough material to continue onwards. Whether that's also a question, I suppose, of whether there is actually anything to add. But yeah, I'd like to hear live stuff. I'd like to hear some remixes of the next 2 or 3 albums as well, to be the proper nut and bolt remixes, which is not really what's happened through these albums, because they all haven't needed that. Yeah, it would be interesting, but that we're into completist territory there. But then I suppose that's kind of what you're doing with these anyway, isn't it? You're appealing to people like you and me. Yeah,
for sure.
Yes.
So there you have it, everybody. Bursting Out the Inflated Edition. If you've heard it already, you have it. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. If you still haven't gotten your copy, but you want it, don't sleep on it, folks, because they don't make a ton of these, right? And when you get them while they're out, otherwise you'll be crying in 6 months saying, I should have bought it because now it's $150 or whatever, right? Yeah, exactly. I've done it too in the past. I've done it too. I'm just as guilty. So I don't do it anymore. But yeah. So go check it out. And I want to thank Steven for jumping on with me today to review this cool box set. You'll see him on the UK Connection in just a little bit. So that'll be coming in a little over a week. So stay tuned for that. And visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alerted of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. I don't know if we're going to get any more new reviews today, guys, but just for shits and giggles, coming up possibly next week, going to hopefully review these 2, speaking of box sets, 2 great Psychotic Waltz box sets of Social Grace and Bleeding just came out, double disc goodies that's coming up soon, and all other stuff happening as well. I got a whole stack of stuff here, new Arion, new all sorts of things. So stay tuned for more. For Steven Reid, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching us here on Wednesday, new album review day. What's hot with Sea Tranquility. Till later on, have a good one. Bye-bye.